Hello, everyone. Welcome to Light Up Your Worth. I'm so excited. We're doing another live recording of my podcast guest. And so today I have Nancy on with me, and she's an intuitive guide, a spiritual teacher, a master sound and energy alchemist who loves helping people break through to an authentic, well-loved life. She is really quite amazing. I have been using some of her sound healing for several years now. But Nancy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's fun to be live too. I like it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I know we had such a good time. I was on your live TV show. Gosh, has it been almost 2 months now? The Light Up
So I
Your
try to
Life.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was like that was so much fun. And so we actually taped, so everybody knows, we actually taped an episode, and for whatever reason the only episode that has disappeared. And what we both realized was that this is actually perfect timing with where she is and where I am. And so we just thought it would be a perfect collaboration to come back together. So I'm even more excited to do this again, Nancy.
Yes, me too. I'm like, when you were like, I'm sorry I lost it. I'm like, it's fine. Actually, it's really good. It feels really good to me. So there are no mistakes. And, I think, yeah, it's always perfect if we just look at it and see that,
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a minute or two.
Yeah. And, I had to go back and stop kind of beating myself up because I was like, this has never happened. Like, how in the world, I'm a professional. How could a recording be completely gone? But then, when I reached out to you, one of Nancy's outstanding qualities is, if you have the opportunity to work with her, is that she has this super calming presence. Like, you're like, okay, she says it's okay, just let it go. Let it go, call in gratitude. There's a reason, and so we were talking about what were we going to talk about today, because there's so many subjects that we can go down into with our backgrounds and so many things that overlapping. Because she's rather amazing with her journey that she has been. And one of the things I thought we would jump into is that we had talked about that it's 20 years ago now that you had jumped into this whole entrepreneurship, the whole spiritual journey, and how that all began with listening to yourself and your archetypes. And so we have a whole lot of stuff there. But I wanted to see if you would just share, lead us off with how you came down this road 20 years ago. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's so cool because it was 20 years ago this week. It was the first week of February in 2002 that I started teaching yoga. But the journey before that, of course, I think a lot of times what I notice from talking to people is what leads us to the work and helping other people and what we do is usually a lot of challenges that came beforehand that really we didn't like too much, and we were like, what the hell, and how do I figure this out? And so it started there. It started many years earlier, as in my childhood. But one of the things was actually, I was thinking back earlier today, back into my childhood of I had a period of my parents got divorced, which I didn't really notice that much. I was barely 2 years old, so I didn't really notice that much. And we lived with my grandparents, and my mother and I, and my brother, and it was great. When my mother got remarried, suddenly I had a stepfather I had met twice. A bunch of other kids came into the family. Within 2 years, I went from only oldest of two at age 7 till the middle child of 7 kids by the time I was 9. And I was thinking today, there was a lot of trauma. One of my older stepsister, her mother had been a drug addict and came to live with us. My other 2 siblings there, my father's sister died unexpectedly. So they came. So there was a lot of trauma and stuff in the family. And I was went from having my grandma and 5 adults, essentially in my life, to lost in the shuffle. And so it was yeah, so I had challenges when I was younger, let's say, and by the time when I got older, when I started having my own kids, so it became, well, actually one thing, when I was 15, I was very frustrated with my home life, and I ended up finding a counselor. I was actually wanted to get put in a foster home because I was very frustrated with my life at home. And I went to the local crisis center. And at that point, I met a counselor named Barbara, and I was really thinking about that earlier today, because really that's, part of what I do is like counsel or coach or guide people. And I was thinking, she like was a huge life-changing person in my life, because my parents were just trying to live, and they had 7 kids and they're trying to figure it out. But I'm a kid too, I was 7 when this started all happening, and I'm like, what the heck, so
Right.
anyway, but so I got really, like, she really made a difference in my life. I think that counselor really helped me, and also made me realize that it was up to me ultimately, to take care of myself. No one else was going to fix it for me. I really saw that in the sessions that we went to. So, but a little bit later on, when I started having my own kids, it was very important to me that they were felt and valued, that they felt valued and seen, and that I helped them. So I think whatever challenges we have in life, we try to make it better for the next generation, right? Most of us as parents, like, that's what we try to do. So, but when my 3rd daughter was born, I ended up with severe chronic back and neck pain. And eventually that's the thing that led me to yoga, led me to sound codes, led me to all these things that I'm doing now. But it came from like, and once I found things that started helping, I'm like, I want to help other people. So that was kind of the backstory of how yoga became the first step. And I think we were talking a little about human design, and I'm a projector, which I didn't know that. I didn't know that till a few years ago. Projectors like 20% of the planet, and we're here to help like guide people. We can see how we can look at systems depending what we specialize in, and really see a good way to do things. We can help other people manage their energy. But we were not gifted with very consistent energy ourselves, but it's important to be acknowledged. And when my mother got remarried, I was not acknowledged. So that's really hard for a projector in particular. But I realized, I was like, what are all the gifts in that? I became such a strong person from that. It gave me, qualities. So like, I saw what a strong person I was. Before that, I had a very cushy life. And then I was like, oh, well, I had to kind of suck it up and figure out like how to survive my childhood. So, but it led me to, like I said, to teaching yoga and helping other people. But even though I was teaching yoga, really what I was teaching people was really empowering them to help themselves and seeing that, finding their own way. Because when I started practicing yoga, I realized my back and neck did not hurt just because my new daughter was really heavy in the the carrier. There was a lot of other stuff in my system that needed to be acknowledged. And some of it was also, I was born to do more than just be a mother and a wife. I have a bigger purpose. So my pain was like, hello, there's more work for you to do in the world. You got to take care of yourself and you got work to do. So
yeah. Isn't that amazing how the universe will send us those signs like that, why they push some and then others are like completely good of, their roles that they have, and they're not out there seeking and learning and trying to figure things out. And I think our audiences, your show, mine, is that they are seeking, right? There's something not quite aligned. They may not be able to put a finger on it. And so you start looking for things of what's going to fit for you. So, and I think that was what your next step was, right? With figuring out.
So I had, when my neck started hurting was like 1995, and it took several years before I actually started teaching yoga. But first I had to get down on my knees and say, oh, please help me, because I had a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a newborn, and I had like really bad chronic pain. So I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I also have the human design gate of shock. So I'm like, oh, I guess somehow I designed myself before I was born, because I do believe we have a say before we're born, our families, who comes, I don't see myself as a victim of anything in my life. I see it was all perfect, and it was all like, some of the stuff wasn't necessarily fun, but I think it's like, knowing like that we can't change things that happen, but we can take our power back from it. So what happened with my yoga journey was like, I eventually found yoga, and it really helped me to tune into myself. And I think that's what we were talking about earlier, like tuning to ourself. And that's the thing I was also really, that was my biggest message at yoga. Like, to me, I'm a fitness person. I like fitness, but yoga to me is very much a spiritual practice. And it's, it's very, and I realized too, like when I always said, and I ended up singing sound codes, I'm like, oh, I really never thought I could sing for the first 51 years. But when I started teaching yoga at like almost 40 years old, I was still chanting. I was using my voice as part of it. So I was using sound healing, even though I wasn't really thinking of it as singing per se. So the sound has actually been there the whole time as a piece of it. So I sat in the basement of the Catholic Church teaching yoga and going, oh, is this okay down here? It's not a religion, but I'm not even Catholic. But anyway, so it was probably 11 years later when the sound codes, actually probably 2009 was when the energy work started coming. All of a sudden, like these things started coming across my path. I owned the yoga studio. It had grew into a yoga studio at that point, and we had all these interesting things coming in. So I was learning about all these things, and next thing I'm going down the path of energy medicine. So it was like the Oneness Blessing and Rise program at SpaTech, the Realizing Your Sublime Energy. And then what else? Energy medicine school. I went to India. It was like all of a sudden, like 2009, something, I don't know, something in the planets. I haven't checked my astrology chart. Something happened in 2009, and it started shifting, and eventually, by 2017, I had my business for 15 years. And at that point I was ready to like move on. I wanted to I didn't want to be the mama my kids were older and grown up, and I didn't want to be the mama at the yoga studio anymore. So that was kind of how it worked. I was like, all right, this was really cool. But one thing I really realized was that I wasn't just there for the students anymore. I was there for the teachers and the staff, and they were coming to me, and I was seeing what their gifts were and guiding them and really helping them as well. Like massage therapist, like one of mine I had for years, he's like, I'm like, well, we can offer hot stone massage here, but you don't really like it and you suck at it. So don't offer it here. Like offer things that you love to do. Like you're amazing, So I saw like the gifts in people, and I encouraged them. And I always was like, come on, like getting them out of the closet. And so I just really discovered that I really had a talent and a gift for that. And I loved to do it.
Yeah, you do definitely have a natural talent for that. I noticed that just from the very first time that we've ever talked, and we have some of the same friendships, and just how you present yourself, how you interact is always so uplifting, and that presence. And you're allowing everything to just come through you. I'd be fascinating, since you did mention about the timeline, right? With having human design, and is that you could probably go back and it will be there, right? It will show you that there's some shift in with the human design with the chart, which is so fascinating, I think.
Yeah. A lot of interesting things happened like right around that time. So I had a younger brother that he had gotten into like some drugs and stuff, and he was like mommy's youngest. And so there was we didn't talk for a while that much, and I wanted to talk to him, but his son was born October 2009, the same month I had my first Oneness Blessing. And that son was like the icebreaker that brought us back together too. So it was really cool.
I love that you're able to take life like events, right? The life events where it can knock people down. And yet you have taken those purposeful, very intentional choices to see a lesson, get out of the story, and see what's greater, that it's leading you down some other path, and to be curious. And it, being curious is really a sign of a leader.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely have I think part of it was really, I grew into it, like with having my own business, my own yoga studio. Part of it, like when you're the leader, like it doesn't help if I'm going to fall apart at the helm, that's not really going to help anything, so it's like, it doesn't help it, but I had, circumstances where one of the biggest ones is when my yoga studio burnt to the ground in a giant mill fire in 2007 on my middle daughter's 17th birthday. And it was like, okay, am I supposed to keep going? And I knew, like, not too long after, I'm like, all right, the universe is pushing me out of the nest. And I did go forward with that. But I think it's interesting because later I ended up in a much nicer place. I had a homeless yoga studio for 5 months. And then we opened in a new, better place. But it's funny because of, like several years in, I remember like talking to one of my teachers, and what the vibe in my studio was, we support each other. We say, hey, this person's really good, or go here. And some of that I learned from my yoga training too, like the style that I grew, they were really like, if someone comes to you and you can't help them and someone that can, send them to that person, so that was really the philosophy. And it was very much teamwork in the studio. But I remember saying to one of my teachers, Susie, she's from Ireland. She had just started, and then the fire happened, and she waited, and she's like, you gave me a chance, Nancy, even though when people could hardly understand me. And and she was like a most amazing, like loyal teacher for years. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, wow, Susie, that's really awesome that you did this thing. And she's like, oh, I learned it from you. I'm like, oh. I was like, oh. So it's pretty cool. But people still, even though like the studio, she closed the doors October, I sold it. She had it for a few years and closed it like a few months into COVID, but people still talk to me about it. So like that energy I put in and created, that energy still lives. The studio isn't there, but in our memories and in our good feelings. And there's so many yoga teachers that even came out of it. And it's just kind of amazing to me, like how it all happened. Because I was just like, my neck hurts. Let me figure this out. Let me start taking yoga. All right, I'll teach some yoga. And then I'm like, wow, that turned into a yoga studio. It's like, if I knew that ahead, I probably would have freaked out. But
yeah. Well, and I think it's just, we've talked about how you listen, you're tuning into yourself and listening to your own intuition. That's it's so powerful of, unlike I struggle to do that at times. I go so fast. I'm a manifesting generator.
Yep.
And so I just have idea after idea after idea after idea, and I can get out there and just get halfway through, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm done. Okay. And well, I've been known to do, right? Like,
yeah, but you have like lots of gifts as that manifesting generator, and you have this sacral motor, which I don't. So I might get out there. I have to listen to my intuition, because if I start putting out there something and I run out of energy, like I don't want that egg on my face. So I need my integrity. So I need to really make sure. And I mean, the cool thing is, we were talking earlier, when I was doing my business, like there wasn't online, there weren't all these voices saying, do this, do that. There wasn't as much advice out there as it is today. And I really just, I was a stay-at-home mom. I liked being home for my kids. My husband had his own business, but it gave me like also some purpose as well. So I always just managed it to like, this is feeding my soul. But I always kept a balance that felt really good. And even after the fire, when I opened my new doors, we had added in massage, and I had a massage rental room at the other place, but we added in massage and more things. But I'm like, other places like this, sometimes they have a person, a lot of yoga studios don't have a desk person unless they expand. And I was like, I don't want to sit at the desk all day and I don't want to pay somebody. So guess what? They're going to call or they're going to make their appointments online or whatever. But I always did it my way and it worked the best.
I think that's important for people to really gather, really to not to gather, but to take away about whatever it is, like whatever style they are, right? Like we're opposite styles. And I do listen to my intuition, I think I wrote down, I was looking at some notes where I'd written down on a program, like, intuition, listen to that shit, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to focus. So I actually have to go to hot yoga to get my brain. That's how much I have to I have to get in an environment where I literally have to focus on my breath. Like,
Yeah.
so that I will slow down enough
Yeah.
to realize, like, to be present. The
That
regular
is,
yoga, as beautiful as it is, it will not slow down my monkey mind.
that's awesome. And it's, I love that because hot yoga distracts me. Like the heat distracts me. It takes away the focus for me because it makes me think about how hot I am. And so I like not hot yoga, but yeah. So I think it is the like finding those things. And I kind of got away from yoga a little bit for a while. And now I'm coming more back to it and coming back to the breath work again. And I think like before the pandemic and stuff, I think my body knew because my diaphragm and my third chakra started contracting like just a month or two before that all came down. And I was like, I think some part of my body was tuned into that. But yeah, but it's interesting because some of the work that's coming through me now, we were talking earlier, like the sound codes and the chakras and the Amrita, like it's like, oh my God, this is like the ancient yogic stuff is like coming back up, everything old, new again. It's like all the memories and this information is in our system. And that's what is like starting to come through and awaken me and awake. So I'm like, oh, back to those yoga books and those yoga practices again. And those memories are like, oh, okay. So yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
that's powerful.
interesting.
So if somebody's listening and they're like, what in the world is a sound code?
Yes, good question, because a lot of people probably have heard of sound healing, or you definitely can know the effect of sound, right? So regular music, like it can affect us in a lot of ways, especially if it has words. So words can trigger or bring things good, bad, indifferent, or whatever. And then there's sound healing that uses instruments, and it's all like vibration. And we are physical, we are affected by vibration, by energy. We are like 70% water, and water especially is very easily affected by vibration. But so sound codes specifically, I learned them in 2013 when I had my Atlas balanced, or I experienced them. I trained a year later. So sound codes are like specific melodies that your body, they act like an ancient language that your body responds to and understands. So the first ones I learned about was for Atlas balancing. So the Atlas is the first vertebrae in the neck. And if you think about the neck, like the neck's a pretty narrow gateway here, but that's like our whole, our spinal column, our nervous system, everything comes through here. Our heavy head is balancing. Yeah. And so there was a gentleman in Switzerland, his name was Rene Chamberlain. He passed on, I don't know, a while ago, but he had a lot of accidents and injuries, and he had a lot of neck pain and back pain. And he did 20 years of research and discovered that probably more than 90% of people are actually born with that Atlas out of alignment. And it happens, it's before they're born, but birth and other things can make it worse. And that throws things off, like the way most people, and as well as animals. So usually too, it's the right side is more open and the left is closed. So what is the right side of the body? The masculine. Woo, the right side, the masculine energy, way too much. Feminine side, shut down. So very interesting there, right?
Oh, no coincidence there.
No. So, and actually it's my understanding that babies starting in January 2020 actually started being born, more of them with their atlas at place now. So we're evolving. So there's a connection to the evolution there. And also there's a chakra back here, the Alta Major, the mouth of God, et cetera, et cetera. So, if anything, a physical, one thing I learned really well from yoga is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all connected. When you go to yoga and you like stretch, why does your mind relax? Your emotions, everything is connected. It doesn't matter which doorway you take in, it's all connected. So, so my teacher, Elizabeth Westerman from Germany, she learned from this gentleman, Rene Chamberlain. He actually created a machine called the Atlas Prophylax, which uses physical vibration that you put on the neck and actually brings the atlas in balance. And once the atlas is in place, the rest of the body can start to come into alignment. So if something's out of place, the things, if you picture a skeleton, right? If the top bone is like doing something weird, everything else is going to try to adjust itself. So when it comes back into place, everything starts to readjust itself. So she used this machine of his for like 7 years. She's also a singer by trade and a healer. And this sound codes modality started coming through her. She's like, I feel, it just started coming through, and she started working with it, practicing it. And it became, so that's what I experienced in 2013. And I was like, at the time, my body was feeling better from all the yoga I was doing and the chiropractor and the massage and all the things.
Don't you just love all the things?
I do. Yeah. I do. My hedonist archetype loves the massage and all that too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So anyways, so this woman that I had it with, she came across from California to Massachusetts and sang the sound codes. And I realized like I could hold my posture a lot more easily. And at that point, I had been practicing yoga for 14 years. And, so I knew my body really well. And I was like, oh, I can hold my posture better. And when I go back into like a back bend, my neck feels safer. It's like, I don't feel like my head is not feeling stressed, because our body, if something isn't right, the body tries to protect us, and the muscles will get tight because it's like, not a good idea, not a good idea. So when the body is in alignment, the body's like, that's better. So that was June of 2013. By October, I was actually a ½ inch taller. And when I went to my doctor's appointment, I don't know, a few months after, I said, can you measure me? I want to, get the official, make sure my pencil is not off on my, and she's like, yeah, you're measuring a ½ inch taller. But she said, you don't get taller at your age. She said, your neck must have straightened out. And I was like, oh, yes. So little did I know,
shrinking, right? We start shrinking.
Most people do. My mother has shrunk several inches. Most people shrink. It's just the nature of like the fluids and the spine and just life, right? Life is kind of So, and that tends, yeah, I see that. I saw that a lot in my family too. So I was like, oh, how can I feel better? And so that Atlas balancing really helped. And little did I know that less than a year later, I would take the training myself. And so that opened that doorway for me to start singing the sound codes. But sound codes are cool because they work. Like I used to go to the chiropractor. The chiropractor moves the bones, but your muscles are still tight. And then sometimes before you get to massage, the bones are already moving back into place. So sound codes work on everything at the same time. It's like the body orchestra, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and emotional. And they also they work on everything, but they go deeper. They affect you at the subconscious level, which is, where we're operating from, that's where we're operating, but it's very like, we aren't aware of it. So it can make a big impact, but it's very gentle too. So it's really.
Yeah. And I think people are just really waking up. I think there's been this big movement of people understanding, thanks to the science out there, right? I always think of Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton are my original go-tos who've been studying it for so long, at least that I'm aware of. And this whole movement towards understanding, or, if we have 90,000 thoughts a day, how many of those are actually conscious? All those things that were playing back, those patterns and behaviors and traumas, of I got to survive this, get through it, whether it's a big trauma or just little traumas, not being heard and on everyday
Yes.
things. And so that's really powerful. Uh-huh.
I've been calling them like micro traumas lately of what was something the other day I was calling I forgot what it was, like little micro traumas. I don't remember. I was using that yesterday. I don't remember what it was about though, but it's what is it? Einstein said something about like you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that got you into it. And actually, earlier today on my show, when she was talking about human design, we're talking about a lot of times, we in this time period where mankind, men and women, have been trying to use their brain to figure everything out, and we're meant to like, that's not what's supposed to work. The brain is supposed to be used for the benefit, for our benefit. We direct it. It's not supposed to be the leader. And so it's more down in the body, right? Our body's wisdom. And so that's the cool thing. And like the stuff I did with yoga and the breath work, and then the sound is like coming back into your body. And then what happens is when you shift, your perspective changes and your energy changes, and you see something in a new way. Like even when I do like energy, whether it's table work or sound codes or just energy work on the phone. I remember when I used to do a lot in person, I did aesthetics for a while, like facials. But that girl, Susie, she's like, yeah, when you get a facial with Lisa, you get a facial. When you get one with Nancy, you come off the table, you're like, what was that? So I just took the facials off the table. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really a leg waxer kind of a girl anyway. So, but I would see people, I give them a facial and they come out and they're brighter, but I'm like, they don't need the facial. It's just like the energy work and it's just like, you can see it and you can feel it. And then you just, you come in, you have an energy session or a sound code session, and you go out like this, but you feel like a whole different person, and the world responds to us differently, right? That's our vibration and our frequency.
Yeah, since everything is energy.
Yeah. So
our frequency and,
Yeah. So people, there's some fun stuff like now we use sound for a lot of stuff like ultrasound, and even the chiropractor I used to go to, he said they were even had using sound plates or something, experimenting for astronauts in space to put their feet on to help prevent like osteoporosis. And like they use sound for a lot of cool stuff, but people can even go to YouTube and you can find videos of using sound, how it moves like physical matter, right? We have physical density in us, and you can see things, how it moves water, which we're a high percentage of water. And when I do like the Atlas balancing, people will feel right away like a change in their range of motion. And when I do the body balancing, I work with the tailbone. People palpate their tailbone and I'll sing the sound codes and they'll feel it and they're like, oh, it moved. And I'm like, now for my next trick.
Yeah.
So I love it when people can like really see a tangible result, and it's like, oh, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I know I keep saying this. I love this, but it's so fascinating. So even now, like just in the last, I'd say probably the last 2 months or 3 months, I've never had issues with my knees, right? And all of a sudden now my knees are like aching and aching, and I thought, oh, maybe it's all the change that's happening, all the life transitions. I pulled out my book, right? Like, okay, what does the knees mean? What is it filling into in my body? And I'm like, no, I don't want to believe that. But
I feel you.
I don't want to know that. No,
Yes.
that's not it. Right. And, about moving forward with like the feet and so I also go to YouTube and I listen to frequencies like to go to sleep with or just have in the background, like, I don't know, is it 528 hertz? That is like one of or 512. It's something. There's a certain frequencies and above that really just, you see them, they usually put beautiful videos and the different frequencies. Oh, remove negative energy out of your environment, or
Yeah.
They do all kinds of things. So now we were talking before too about your sound codes and how now you have all of this new stuff that's coming in. So
Yes.
what's coming in now?
I will
Curious.
tell you. And one thing I just want to mention too, that you made me think about, like, so the like instruments can make all kinds of sounds, and it's cool when you can just listen, and I love it. And sound can be very subtle. Like things can happen, and then if you look back, you're like, wow, look at what it's like sometimes we don't notice things changing because it's so subtle, but the human voice is actually the only thing that can actually technically mimic any sound in any other sound, which is a kind of a pretty cool thing. So, but what's been coming through lately, so the Atlas bouncing I learned, and the body bouncing, but it was last year I started, the back of my neck has been a place for me for a long time, like the neck, the throat chakra, the neck, that's like been one of my areas of work in my life, apparently. So like I mentioned, there's like the mouth of God, but it's also like called the Alta Major chakra. And I started like just getting these new codes and this new information. And then one of my friends, who's a sound code healer, that was in the training we took last year to become trainers, so we can train people to do this particular modality. She was getting some sound codes too, of like working on the sphenoid bone in the skull and some other things. And we, our teacher said, you and Lydia, you may seem different, but I feel like you're the same. I feel like you should connect. And I've known her since 2014, and we've just kind of known each other, but haven't talked much. And all of a sudden we started connecting, and we started like practicing some sound codes together. And we're like, oh my gosh. And just like our energy coming together was like creating magic. It's like we each had two halves of a book, and here it is. So we just did a 2-part event this year of like this, like, because we're shifting, we're awakening. So as we are, things are awakening in our body. And it's like, so I'm seeing this thought of like, when you play, like people play, I'm not a gamer, but people play games, and then you break through to the next level, and you go and you get, and I feel like it's like something shifted, and we're like ready to re-access these things in our body. Like the Atlas is starting to come back into alignment for more people, and we're doing our work, but now it's like Alta Major codes and things. So in the center of the skull, there's if you look at ancient yoga texts or stuff, they talk about Amrita. It's like the nectar of the gods, or nectar of immortality, or so there's like a physical component to it, it feels like, but there's also like a super consciousness that's waking up. And I'm like, with Lydia and I'm like, your codes. So her codes are literally like elevate sphenoid, lower sphenoid, do this. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like a code, like a safe, you're unlocking it. And then it's like the codes I was singing is literally like the Amrita's coming down and doing, instead of going and getting burnt up in the third chakra, which is like our overly masculine fire energy, it's actually coming down into the throat and into the heart. And we're actually going to be able to start accessing it. And so it's like, oh my God, we're like jaws dropping of just what's been coming through us. And it's like, so we've started to share it, and now we're just like, yeah, so it's really cool.
And no coincidences, right? That the earth has been shifting. We're now in 2022 with the frequency of the earth, changing and shifting with where we're moving. And, for people who have previously heard about Schumann's resonance, there's the science from NASA about the earth shifting energy and all this awakening that's happened over the last, especially 18 months with the pandemic, with the awakening. And it's no surprise that now it's time for those codes to come in, and that you're that conduit to be able to bring it in.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was like a healer teacher, kind of a seer scientist a few years ago that I was talking to, and she was saying like Lydia and I are 20 years apart. She just turned 40 and I'm going to be 60 in April. And she says, but it's like this woman, Elizabeth Wood, I think she's around 40, coming up around that age too. But she's like, like people like me, like I had some spiritual awareness in my teens. I was trying astral travel and I was curious about these things in my teens. And then it kind of went away when I went and hung out with, looking for boys and all of that kind of stuff. But she said, like people in my generation that have had this spirituality going on for what we've been held back because it wasn't time. So we were given obstacles in our path until it was time for the path to start clearing. But it's really cool just to see it, like, because in 2009, when I got into like the energy work, one of the things was the Oneness Blessing, which is also called Diksha. It originated in India. There's two people, Amma and Bhagwan, that are like really avatars on this planet. I actually met them in 2010. And the Oneness Blessing is a blessing for spiritual awakening. And so I started, had my first blessing, ended up becoming a blessing giver, ended up becoming a trainer. And I haven't been as active in that community, but when I went to California a few years back for an Akashic Records retreat, I was talking to a woman there and she said, are you a oneness blessing giver? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh, I can see it in your field. I was like, oh.
Oh, wow.
So that was like so cool. It's like, it just made me realize, and like all the stuff we've done and that we do, it's like we embody it. And so the bigger yoga teacher, John Friend, who was founder of Anusara, he's not a part of it anymore, but when I would go, he was such a powerful teacher that taught like amazing things. And I remember going to a workshop. There was probably 150 people in this workshop. And he was talking and I was learning not only what he was teaching me, but I was getting all these other downloads of stuff because it was in his field, it was in his presence. And I remember that was the first time I ever like really understood and experienced something like that. Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
That is really cool. I remember when I was studying to become in my professional world of a lean master, which is like a lean sensei for scientific problem solving, but you walk people through change, right? Their own paradigms, et cetera, in organizations. And I bring it up because there was, we had to take a train the trainer course so that we could train it, in the organizations and teach us about how adults learn. And I remember watching as she was teaching, I would get ideas, right? Not only was I learning the material, but I was coming up with all, like, your brain just like, oh, I got to write that down. I got to write that down. You just have to keep a separate notes or go back to this, use this with this. And what she shared with me, this instructor, Michelle Jones, was that most people don't have that ability. So whether you're doing it in a professional realm and you're learning some type of modality, that ability for your brain to be able to do that it's like dual learning, dual integration is actually it's not a common trait. Wow. Not that there are people who do that. So I don't know if you were aware of that. Like a lot of people do not have that ability to do that.
No, I wasn't. And I think the thing about like whatever our own gifts are, sometimes it's hard to see them for ourselves because we just do them, we do it. And that's where the thing is, where we need other people in our life that like can see us and witness us and say, hey, I see this thing that you're doing, or I see, do you do this, and kind of mirror and reflect it back. And so yeah,
I just love that. I was just so I'm wondering too, like with sound, the sound codes now as they're coming through to you, are you going to be doing some type of class or workshop on this, that for people who are listening, that if they're interested in to be part of this, this new awakening and these new codes coming in with?
Yes. Well, thanks. And thanks for asking that. Right now, currently,
because I'm going to sign up.
Yeah, so. we just did our 2-part event. We might do another one of those. Yeah. So I'm very tuned in to kind of like, I'm very tuned in. Like when I used to teach yoga, probably was my projector gift or whatever. People would go, I feel like you taught that class just for me, but my human design is all but 2 of my centers are open. So I just take in all the other stuff. So I'm like, oh, it's like I'm just feeling the energy and I'm just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So what we have coming up. So one thing, if people are interested in like the Atlas balancing or anything for themselves for like one-on-one, I do have on my website, which is nancyandrew.com. I have people can do either, do that, or there's like a sound codes consult that is free if someone's curious about that. And I actually just did one yesterday, which was awesome. So the other thing is Lydia and we're going to start teaching more people how to use the sound codes for themselves and others. So it's very powerful. So Lydia and I both have our own modalities too. And last year, I taught my own modality, which I called it Mayokotosas, which means all is well, but I think I'm going to change it to divine alchemy. But I had like the people that came through.
I just got goosebumps. Yeah.
One of them was already a sound healer. And she was one of the people that said, when I did her Atlas balance, she's like, I want to learn sound codes from you. I said, okay, well, I don't teach it, but my teacher in Germany does. And I had 2 other sound healers ask me to teach them. I'm like, I don't teach sound codes. So this is the projector getting her invitation. Oh, maybe I do teach sound codes. So I taught a course, and 2 of the people that did it never sang sound codes and aren't even knew. One of them has been doing healing for a while. One of them was like a realtor when I met her, she's like, and now she's singing sound codes for people and loves it and wants more. And so Lydia and I are gonna do, I think in March, we're starting to put together a training for people to sing some of the universal sound codes. And the thing is, you don't have to be a singer. The sound codes actually develop your voice, like even help your throat chakra. They develop your voice, and you can sing them to yourself or out loud. You don't have to sing them out loud, but they really are so like transformational, even to sing them to yourself. So yeah, so I think in January, we're starting to put together a course. We'll probably start sharing about that in the next few weeks as we land on the date. But Lydia and I, we're both really listening to the energy. And the cool thing about like working together is like the moment one of us will talk and we're like, oh, I was feeling a little of that pushing energy. Ew, let's get rid of that. And then we just come back into our feminine flow. And that's how we're creating it. And that's really, I think, how I created my studio, because what you create with is what ends up in the final product. So when you create with that, that flow and that ease, then that's what so that's what comes forward. So yeah, so I think March is probably going to be when the next course, but you never know what will pop up. We're tuned in.
Yeah. And that's not that long. That's not really that long. That's like 4 weeks. Today is February 1st, the new moon. Happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about maybe the second weekend in March. I think we're looking at, we haven't totally committed, and so we're looking at that to do the first step, which is the universal sound codes, which are powerful, and you can use them for so many things. So one of the codes is state of love, and state of love, like love changes so many things. And it was so 2 years ago, so one of my codes is connected to love. It's called Song of Love. And I had one of those life traumas that comes up and you're like, what the hell? Like, why do I have to deal with this thing? Like somebody like coming at us to sue us about something that was like, oh, like one of those like just yucky things. And you're like, and and I was like, okay, well, what if I throw some good energy at it? What if I put love on this, instead of like putting fire with fire, what if I put love on it? I remember putting some of my crystals on some of like the negative, like the paperwork and stuff on it. But I just sat in my living room and I sang like love codes and some other codes, and it shifts us, right? What we're doing shifts ourselves. And it was a very short time, and the situation literally dissolved itself. So
I could use some of those codes right now. I got a few areas that I could shift with love, or what we're putting out there, right? It really goes to share about how we all are energy, and everything is that frequency that we put back out.
Yeah, well, I had like a feng shui, it was this feng shui lady in 2009 that came, like when I had my studio, people would come and say, hey, can I offer this thing here? And her name was Christine. She's the one that introduced me to the Oneness Blessing, but she did some stuff at my house. And at one point we had a legal issue come up in, I don't know, 2011. And I remember I still found that paperwork a few years back of her, like some of her cures, where instead of like fighting fire with fire, which just ignites more, right? She's like, imagine you're like making smoothies for them and baking cookies with them. And, like, she's like, I know it can be tough, but what if you imagine like being really nice and doing like the opposite of what you might want to do? Like it can really, it was so, yeah, I think that's where my love codes idea came up with, like when I had that situation a couple years ago. And it really worked. I think it's like when you can don't focus when you start going down the rabbit hole, because I've done the rabbit hole way many times in my life.
I think we all have, right?
We all.
Yeah.
So, if you notice it, and so the thing with having the code was it gave me another place to focus. It gave me another thing to do. So, there's that little tendency. So, and when you start to shift it, it does, that rewires. We're back to the subconscious mind rewiring, right?
Mm-hmm. So powerful. So powerful. Well, this has been such a joy, Nancy. I'm so glad that you were here with us, and we'll go ahead and share also what's your social media that people can reach out to you. I know you shared your website.
Yep. Yeah. My website is my name, nancyanger.com, and spelled like anger. Most people do not say my last name right. Even people that have known me.
Notice I didn't say it at the beginning because
I did.
I was like,
most people don't know. It's cool. It's fine. We used to say Ranger when we went out to eat, but because so people would say it right. It doesn't matter. Yes. So I'm on Facebook. I have a like a public profile. I have a regular page, and I have a group. It's called the Nourished Soul with Nancy Anger. So.
And your TV show, if people can go catch your TV show, it's
yes, yep, that is live until February 22nd. I will be my 24th show, and then I'm going to step back from that. I feel like I'll show up somewhere else, but I'm going to step away from that particular. But it's called Light Up Your Life, very close to your Light Up Your Worth. That is at 2:00 on Tuesdays, live on the Bold Brave TV network. It's live on, I think, YouTube and Facebook and Spotify and maybe some other places.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if they just went back through some of the episodes. They might see somebody that looks familiar here too. Me, I was in it, and we just had such a great time.
If you go, if you go to my website, you can find the back episodes too in there. So yours will be on there. I think it's under featured end. So I put a link there so people can find them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. So thank you again for joining me, and I hope somebody reaches out for the sound codes. If you do, don't be surprised, because I've been drawn to sound codes for years now. With doing sound healings, the frequencies. One of my early guests was Vicki Graham, and she has done some work with sound codes herself. And when you just get those calls, like, oh, there's just something there, but you're kind of waiting. You're not sure what you're waiting for, but when I listen to my own intuition, is like, I'm waiting for my teacher. I'm waiting for my teacher projector, and that you resonate with, because there's so many incredible people, but that resonating when your souls connect, just like yours does with the partner that you are receiving the sound codes with, and how they naturally find each other.
I think that's the thing, is to just be patient and wait, because it will come, the right thing will come. And the sound codes, when I started teaching them or started doing them at the studio, I remember this woman that I knew from the Oneness Blessing coming in the door. She lived 45 minutes away. It was a Friday and I wasn't always in there. And she walked in the door and I happened to be there. She's like, I want that thing, that thing you're doing with the neck. She didn't even know what it was called. She knew she was supposed to have it. And that's the thing, right? It's the resonance, and it's the energy, and it's the attraction of following that, instead of this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I know I was going to wrap it up, but I just really wanted to leave that with people, to really follow that, to listen to it and tune into our bodies. And, you're such a wonderful leader in really demonstrating it through all of the challenges of 20 years of entrepreneurship. So again, congratulations. I'm
Thank
sorry that
you.
your neck hurt all those years ago, but I'm glad that your neck, I'm grateful,
Yeah.
right, that you listened to yourself and
Mhm.
sought ways to help it so that we could cross paths. So if anybody's listening and they're having something happen, that we both encourage you to follow that intuition, shine your light, step into your own worth so that others can find you. They're waiting for you.
Yeah, it's just, and take a chance on yourself. When I first took my yoga training, my husband was like, "Oh, I can't stay home a weekend a month." And I'm like, "But I know it's important for me to take this." And it's so important to just listen to that.
Yeah.
And when you do it, when you start listening to the little things, the bigger things, it becomes more automatic too.
Mhm. It sure does. It sure does. I know I ask for him in my meditation every day, just show me a sign that I will recognize that I'm on the right path.
Yeah. That's how I built my studio. So perfect. I would sit there, like I had all my kids were at home. I'd go in my little room. I'm like, all right, you want me to do this? You need to show me and help me, because I don't really know. That was my,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know what is
exactly what
going
I did, my
on.
dears, for many years. I didn't have a life coach for many years in or anything else. So just sit and say, show me the next thing.
Right. Show me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're doing it. I mean, your show is amazing. I know your following is growing. And I think you said how many, how many like,
yeah,
what?
14 countries. What was really fascinating about that is when I went into it, one of them is UK, but UK is actually, England and Scotland, and I'm Scottish, part Scottish. And so I was just so excited that, there's somebody there over in Scotland. So there's, I guess, technically 15 countries, right, listening.
Mhm.
So that
That's
was
awesome.
really, yeah, that kind of lights you up itself, that it is
Yeah.
growing and just taking
Yeah.
doesn't have to be perfect either.
It never
Just,
will be. No, and that's just showing how important like your work is and your message, and you're following your mission, and it will lead to whatever it leads to, and it will be amazing. And it's just the path. It's like, I feel like the path these days is like we have the stone in our hand and I'm like, where's this one going?
right, right. Where sometimes I sit here and I have a question. I was trying to think of something last night. I was changing some pricing on a meditation, right? Energetic healing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull up my deck, my fairy medicine deck.
Yeah.
And I need a number between these two numbers, but I can't settle. I can't, my brain keeps coming in. So I pulled a card and it gave me a number.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I still I still have to do tricks for myself too sometimes. I totally get it. It's like, but it's just, but the thing is to just like be able to laugh, and just be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's the best thing, is when you can just be yourself. And like, it's like, I think that's when our most important work happens, when we're just being ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Right?
And I'm kind of a messy person anyway, just like throw it out there and then, have people come help me fix it up, right? Like that's, and once I can settle down, then the process is, because I love process and structure. That's probably why I did that in healthcare for so long. But anyway, well, thank you again. I'm going to wrap it up this time for sure, because we'll just keep going, because
I
I
know.
just love talking to you, Nancy. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.